I've been talking about Nadi readings for a long time, and on podcasts with other people, I've talked about the various experiences I've had with the readings and things that have happened, including a prediction of a near-death experience. But I never really sat down and told the whole story of my first reading in Pune, India in 2010, where I was given predictions and told about things that were going to happen that at the time I thought were metaphysically, philosophy. They were just speaking and throwing things out. I wasn't sure any of it was going to happen. But 10 years later, looking back at the first reading I ever had, I find that everything that was predicted, everything that was talked about came to actually happen to me. And except for one thing, which I'll talk about. So I'm dedicating this video to exploring your Nadi readings, the predictions you're given, possibilities of them happening. Realize that normally when you're told things about the future and things that may happen to you or may not happen to you, just the fact that you know could change the outcome. For example, if somebody tells you that you're going to die or get deathly ill of cancer, lung cancer, and you're a heavy smoker, and this is going to be 15 or 20 years from now, what would you logically do? You would start changing your habits. You might stop smoking. You might do some other things. So that would change that prediction. These are all probabilities. But in my particular case, I was told things which at the time I did not believe. I didn't think too highly of them. I thought they were more metaphorical in nature. They sounded like stories. So let me talk about my experience. I was staying at an ashram about 30 miles outside of Pune in the jungle area, in this valley. And the guru there was staying about 3 or 4 months. And this was my third trip to the ashram. And he called me one day and he said, Bill, he says, I want you to go to downtown Pune and I want you to go get a Nadi palm leaf reading done. And I just stared at him like some of you may be watching this going, what in the heck is it? What's a Nadi palm leaf reading? I had no clue, never heard about it before, never even knew the process existed. And so I just kind of gave him that look and he goes, well, you got to go down there and they're going to read your future and your past and say some things that you might need at this time of your life. I still had no clue. I said, well, I don't need a fortune teller. And I don't certainly want to pay somebody to read my future. I'm happy living my days, moment to moment and experiencing the now. And I said, and I don't believe in these things. And he looked at me and he says, even though you don't believe in them, the Nadi believes in you, and there's one waiting for you. Go. I'm ordering you to go. And when you go, don't ask any questions of the reader. Just give yes or no answers. Give them your right thumbprint. And one of the requests he had was have them tell you what your worst sin was from a significant lifetime prior to this one and why that's significant today. So I wasn't feeling that great leaving, having to ask those questions. And I also was naive enough to know that when I went down to the place in Pune and I gave my thumbprint and I sat down, I didn't know the history of these things, not much of it. And the fact that when you are given a Nadi reading, they have to go look for and find your your particular leaf. It's engraved. I didn't know what it was. And I find out now at this stage of my life, I go, oh, it could have been 6 months. It could have been a year. They may never have found it. It could have been days, weeks. And yet I went there naively thinking, well, I'll give them my thumbprint and I'll sit down and I'll wait for them to find it and I'll get it all done today. Well, as it turns out, that's exactly what happened. But that's not the way it happens in the real world. In the real world, if you could get it done in a month or 2 or 3, That is very good, because the leaves are, even though they were created 2,500 to 5,000 years ago by the great rishis, uh, to preserve them, at one time they started dividing them up. They didn't all want them in one location in case there was a fire or theft or something. They didn't want to lose them all. So they spread them out over India. And I've heard anywhere from 17 to 20 something places they could be at. They're in Mumbai, they're in Pune, they're in Delhi, they're in Chennai, they're in various cities. And so if you went to one of those places, they would only could look through the stack of these that they have in their library. So I didn't know any of that. I also didn't know much about the process. Apparently the process was this: these rishis, I believe there's 18 of them, they would sit down, they'd meditate, and they would channel individuals, souls that would be born in the future in a different now. They would come into life, and they would need this information at a certain time of their life. And when they got that information, they would learn about their dharma and purpose and their various things that they needed to know at that time. Some of the predictions were for hundreds of years, some were for thousands of years, some are still in the future, thousands of years. So they did, supposedly, nobody knows the number, but could be millions of these. But those people that have them written will find them. Also, I learned that it's possible that you could have had different rishis do one on you for different times of your existence. In other words, one to get you this lifetime, another in another lifetime, or sometimes the same lifetime. So you had a different reader, and these guys would channel this. They'd read the information off from their minds and what they were getting, and they have scribes that would write it on a actual palm leaf. They take a piece of palm leaf, take the fronds off of it, and then they would engrave in there, and then eventually they would shellac it, try to preserve it. And these things are really old, and then some got really old and crumbly, and somebody would redo them over time. So there's always that possibility of errors. Anyway, that's the history of it. Men give their right thumbprint, women give their left thumbprint. So that's all I knew when I was sitting down. Somebody fed me that information. About 2 hours go by, and I'm called into a little tiny room about the size of my little office computer room here. And I go in there, and there's, I don't know, dozens and dozens, maybe close to 100 incenses going. It's this big smoke thing going, and there's holy pictures of everybody, from everybody's gurus and Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Shiva. It's got everybody in this room, statues, images, various things. And there's a desk, and the guy comes walking in, and I'm sitting down, and he's carrying something that looks like a bundle of Venetian blinds. And they are held together with a hole through each one with a string. So that's why I say they look like Venetian blinds. And there's probably about 20 or so of these palm leaves strung together on each one. They are separated by your thumbprint type. Apparently, like on a horoscope, you have 12 zodiac signs. Well, with so he comes in, he's looking at me, and he lays these leaves out, and he proceeds to tell me how he got them, which I was just trying to explain. And the horoscope has 12 zodiac signs, and they each have a certain personality type. Well, on the thumbprint, there's 108 possible personality types. There's like 108 different variations of swirls and dots and things. And so that breaks it down to 108 groups, but then there's subgroups in that, which I don't understand, and how they figure out from that, I don't understand. So, but basically, it's people that their soul vibration, their frequency is similar to yours, very similar, and so they would be on this string of leaves that are strung together. So he comes in, and the process evolves like this: you are told a piece of information, or actually you're asked a question, and if the answer to it is no, then they take that leaf and they just set it aside. They look at the next one. All it takes is one no question, and that's not your leaf. It could be close. They could ask you a bunch of questions. You could say yes, 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 and then it's no. So they went through 6 leaves, and the reader finally looks at me and he says, intuitively, I feel the 7th one is yours. And he proceeded, and I said, okay, fine. I'm not sure where this thing's going or what's going to happen. And so then he looks at it and he goes, your name is 4 letters long. Now, I am William, legally William on all my documents, passport, etc. But I'd never in my life ever gone by William. I always go by Bill. So when he says my name is, starts with a B, William doesn't, but Bill does. So I said, okay, yes, I'll say yes to that. And then he goes, it's 4 letters long. And I said, yes. And he says, it's Bill. And I thought, okay, that's pretty good. But I thought, well, maybe he overheard a friend of mine in the lobby talk to me or something. So I wasn't too impressed. Like, okay, great. And then he goes, and your father's name was exactly the same as yours, meaning he's dead. Number 2, exactly the same name as me, which is true because I'm Junior. So my father was William Hector McDonald Sr., and I'm Junior. So we had exactly the same name. And then he goes, and your mother's name starts with an M. And then he kind of made some sounds, like maybe it sounded like this or that. And I just kept listening. He kept going. He goes, it starts with an M, and then he asks if there's an A in it. And we kind of play around with that a little bit. Now I'm looking at his leaf. Now these leaves don't have English words in them. In fact, trying to figure out what, I don't see any words. But for some reason, I'm looking at that. When he says Marcella, he kind of mispronounced it, but he said Marcella. And in my mind, I'm looking at the leaf. I see the name Marcella on there, and I realize now, looking back, that was impossible. It wasn't written there, and he didn't see it. I didn't see it. I don't know, but I thought at the time that I've actually saw it written on there. I've made a statement to that in the past, but that's hallucination or some phenomena I don't understand, but I thought I saw it at the time. So Marcella. So I thought, okay, that's pretty good. And then it goes, and your wife's name is, and he just goes right straight to it, Carol. And he says, and you've been married a long time, happy marriage. And then he goes, and your wife graduated from prestigious university. Well, I had to say yes. She went to the University of California, so I'm assuming that's considered a good university. And then he goes through and gives a birth order of my children, and he gives all this information about my life, that I write books. I write books about spiritual people, that I'm currently working on a book about this guru and my trips to India. And just like 40 things, boom, 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 boom. And then he asked me, he says, and your guru is Lord Shiva. Well, I didn't know what to answer, yes or no, because I wasn't really at that time into anything. I'm going, well, I don't know. And then he says, and then you have another guru, and then he goes, your birthday is March 16th, 1946. And I'm kind of impressed by that. I'm going, that's pretty good. All right. He says, but we don't know what time. And so I thought, they don't know what time. All right. So He says, well, we're going to guess between about 105 or 110 and 125. We're not sure. It's not clear to us exactly what time. And what they didn't know was that when I was born, the doctor wasn't there and came in and had asked the nurse what time I was born. And they gave him the same response, well, between 105 and 125. And he just picked 215 or 210, whatever time is on my birth certificate. And so his was a guesswork. And these guys were doing the same exact thing and ended up guessing the same time that was on my birth certificate. So I thought that was interesting that in this reading, they have the same problem that the doctor, when I was actually born, had on determining the time of birth. So it goes on and on and on. And I answered yes to about 40 questions. And some of them were significant, but that's not the point of this recording. When you get your own reading, you'll get your own questions. So basically about your own life. So I listened to all the questions. He says, okay, that's your belief. And I thought, okay, that was a lot of nothing over anything. All right, that must have been my reading. So I start to pay him and he goes, no. He says, that was not your reading. You're going to get your reading later. We're going to work on your Vedic charts. Oh, so that was just your index card. So we know who you are and, and we can go from there. So I went back out into the waiting room. And again, not realizing that this thing could take a long time to do, I sat down and waited, but it took about 6 hours. About 6 hours later on, just late afternoon, early evening, they called me upstairs and they had 3 people. They had a guy interpreting everything for me, and they had a guy that was doing the actual thing, and then there was a guy taking it from one language to another Indian language, and then this other guy was interpreting English for me. So I had 3 people. So there's lots of room for error there, including my recollections. So it starts off, and a guy verifies all the information that was agreed to at the initial sit down, all the basic information and a birth and all that stuff. And then he proceeds to tell me about everything that happened to me before I got there, this lifetime. Here's the stuff that's happened to you. And then he said, I'm now going to read you a significant past life, not your last life. And it could be several lives back, but this one has a relationship to what's happening to you now. And he proceeded to tell me that in this previous life, I was a senior monk, I was like second in charge of an ashram of this current guru's that sent me for the reading. And at this ashram, I ran the place and took care of everything, and I was a righteous, holy, moral person. Everything was going well, and I was respected. And then I committed my worst sin in any lifetime for long. I mean, this was the worst sin I ever could have did. Apparently, in this lifetime, I fell in love with a woman. That was it. Mentally, emotionally, I admired this woman and had taken no action to do anything, had planned on taking no action to do anything. But the guru detected that I, as a senior monk, have fallen in love with this woman, and he cursed my mind and sent me away. I was kicked out of the ashram just for having the thought of falling in love with a woman. And I wandered for years with this kind of mental state of, having a problem, foggy brain and everything. Ended up in the Ganges rivers, taking a bath in my last days of my life, according to this reading. And then I come up out of the water, and there's blaze of light, and there's Lord Shiva. Now you can only see Lord Shiva if you're dead, really. So I come up, there's this light, there's Lord Shiva, and all of a sudden I'm instantaneously transformed into a rainbow, just this rainbow light, and just this rainbow just leaves the earth, leaves this material world, gone. And according to the reading, as far as he could tell, looking through, I don't know how, but he said that, for at least 20 or 30 lifetimes, this was the way I'd leave every lifetime. I would leave in a rainbow body and choose to come back lifetime after lifetime. So it makes a nice story. I don't know if any of that's true or not, but that's what I was told. So I'm thinking, well, what's the connection? Why would I have to know that lifetime? Then he asked me about this lifetime. And as it was, uh, I got blown up in Vietnam by a rocket and hit my head. And I had this concussion that was never really treated. And I had trouble with convulsions and all kinds of other cognitive issues for like 40, almost 50 years after that. And I'd have these seizures and they kept getting worse and worse and worse. And when I met this guru at the ashram when he was in America on tour, one of the first things he did was he looked out at the audience and saw me there and told me he was sending healing vibrations to the brain and just focused on me. And boom, that was in 2008, 2008, August 16th, I think. And that was the last. I never had any seizures after that at all. I had like a couple hundred a year. That year, 2008, I had like 200 something seizures from January till then. And before that, I was having, dozens or hundreds of them every year. So it was a major problem where I was going to lose my driver's license, and it was going to be very difficult to get to work and everything else. So the significant tie-in was this guru put a curse on my mind, and then I meet him 50 something years later in my life, and it's removed. So odd thing, I don't understand it. Maybe it's just, I don't know, but that's what I was told. So I wasn't too interested in that. And then they go, all right, now we're going to talk about the days ahead. So then they made dozens and dozens of predictions and things, and talked about why I'm here, my purpose. My purpose was to love and serve, basically, and to give to others, and to write books, and to communicate to people about the love of God, and get people to discover that spiritual part of themselves. And it was all this kind of stuff. I thought, that's general stuff. And then he got down to specifics, and he said things like, he says, one day, he says, Lord Shiva and the guys of like Babaji would come to you and anoint you with water and oil and chant and bless you. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's probably symbolic, gonna pour his stuff on me and bless me. And then he said, the following year, this is 2010, he says, the following year, 2011, you're going to go to this Shiva temple in southern India, and you will go there and you will know the temple when you see it. And he gave me the name of it, which I can't remember. But he said, you will know it's the right place. You will see a hill off to the side where you will walk up that hill. It'll take 2 to 4 hours. It was kind of vague on that. So you just kind of wander up this hill. When you get to the top of the hill, you'll see all these rishis sitting around a sacred fire on logs, on rocks, and standing and talking. It's all the rishis. It's the ones that did these writings. And so I believe there was going to be 18 of them. He says, but when you join them and you sit down, you will not have any questions to ask them. You will know all the answers already, and you'll be comfortable sitting in the silence with them. So that's what I was told. And I thought, maybe that's symbolic as well. And something significantly is going to happen to you. You're going to have a major life transformation from that experience. So I didn't know what that was about. So that was 2 major predictions. And there was a bunch of predictions about getting my book written, some health issues, major health issues, like, my heart or things. And there was a lot of personal predictions. There was predictions about family. There was predictions about a lot of stuff. All right. But I just point these 2 major ones out because when I experienced them, I realized that everything that they told me I was experiencing, except for one thing. They basically said that in 2020, 10 years from there, and this is as far as the reading would go, it didn't go past 2020. It stopped at 2020. And they didn't know it appeared to be that was the end of my life, as I know it. That's it, 2020, right? And I was told in 2020, stay home, don't go to India. If you go to India, you're not going to come home. You're going to die in India if you go to India in 2020. So I'm thinking, when I got that part of the reading done, I'm thinking that, oh, maybe I got 10 years to go. That's the end of my life. Maybe 2020 I'm supposed to go. And I kind of asked that question, and the guy goes, he says, that's the way it looks now. He says, but there is a possibility that Lord Shiva, Babaji, some powers, divine powers, if they have a job for you, if they have reason for you to continue, then that would be extended for you to carry out their mission, not yours, their mission, their purpose, not yours. The life extension would only come for service to them and to others, not for myself at any level. So I left the reading kind of wondering, wow, this is some odd stuff. It's some interesting stories. Okay, I leave in a rainbow body, the curse on the mind. I'm going to write these books. I'm going to, do all these things. And at the time, I didn't put a lot of stock in it. And so I came home, and that was in 2010. The next year I go back to India, and on the way over, I stop in Frankfurt, Germany. I give a workshop, and there in Germany, I have a heart attack, but I don't tell anybody. I think I was still functioning, but it was okay. But I had a heart attack, so I was concerned. Got to India, was introducing that guru at the ashram to large audiences, 1,500, 5,000, 6,000, 3,000 people. And I was doing that around Mumbai and around Pune and various places. And finally had a major heart attack and collapsed and was taken to ER. And I was told I should go back to America. I needed open heart surgery. I go back to the ashram. I'm packing up my bags. I'm waiting in the kitchen area. I'm sitting there with some other people, and that's where I had this experience of seeing Sri Rateshwar, Paramahansa Yogananda's guru. And I had some other people witness it as well. That's another whole story. I've got a video on that. But it's when I got on the airplane, which was really foolish. If you're having a major heart attack and everybody lets you get on an airplane, and I fly across the country, and I land in Denver, Colorado, and I collapse at customs, and I have paramedics checking me out, and they hold me up for 6 hours until I get back on an airplane to Sacramento. Get to Sacramento, I'm immediately put in the hospital. Boom, ICU, 4 days before they even want to do anything with me. And when I get ready, 4 days later, they transfer me to another hospital, and I get ready to go down early morning to get surgery. I arrive on this gurney. I'm totally naked, cold. The room is cold. There's a metal table with a thin sheet on it, and I'm laying on there with all humility gone. Everybody, it's just insane. And I asked the doctor, I said, well, what's actually going to happen? And he goes, well, he says, we're going to do open heart surgery. He says, I'm going to rip your chest open, exact words, rip your chest open. And he shows me all these tools and everything. And when he cut it open, I got this expander. It's going to keep the chest open. And then I'm going to disconnect an artery to your heart. I'm going to hook up the artery to a heart-lung machine where it's going to pump oxygen in, and it's going to circulate. So your lungs will be stopped. We're going to stop your heart, stop your lungs, and you're going to be kept alive by this machine. I'm going, wow. I said, he says, yeah, we're basically going to kill you first. And I go, what? And he goes, don't worry about it. As long as there's electricity, the machine's going to keep going and you'll be alive. All right. So there's a lot more to this story. But basically, I was told when I asked the question about how much pain am I going to feel, he says, well, when you're on the heart lung machine, we have to cut back on the amount of anesthesia we give you because, it's dangerous to give you too much. So you get very little. And some people complain, and when they come back, that they actually could feel something. But it's a small group. So that kind of worried me at the time. All right. So then they give me an injection of something and tell me to count backwards from 100 to 90 something, right? So I started at 100 and I go to about 96, and boom, it's total blackness for just a microsecond, just boom, boom, and there's like bang, and I'm gone. I'm out of my body. But here's where it gets to be really unusual, because now the prediction that I got about going to southern India, which I was predicted to go to about the same time on the operating table, which was interesting. It was 2011, and I'd left too early because I was going to do this trip afterwards. So now I'm on the hospital bed, and I'm not in that body anymore. And I find myself standing in southern India in this big rock plaza, cobblestone type thing. And there's a temple, I see it. And I intuitively know that's the temple. It's the one I'm supposed to be at. And I look around and I realize I'm not an astral body. I'm not a ghost. I'm not an angel. I'm not disconnected, floating around as a soul. I am actually flesh and blood myself, not somebody else. I'm flesh and blood me. So there's a me that's on the operating table, totally naked. And then there's me. As I look down, I realize I got clothes on. There's fully clothed me standing in this square, church square plaza, with people breathing and bumping into me and the sun beating down on me, and I'm sweating, and I could feel the sunshine. I could feel the ground. I'm actually in a body walking around southern India. That's what the whole strange part about this. Having had 3 near-death experiences, this is the first time I've experienced being in my body in a different location, while my other body is being cut open and and cut apart and operated on. So I'm there, and I'm sensing in my body as I'm walking around, like hands and tools and things. There's something going on in my chest, but not 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 any pain or anything. But it's what's happening to the body on the table, not me. So I realized that there's a little hill, and there's a path. I got nothing else to do. They said in the prediction I'd walk 2 to 4 hours, so my operation is going to be 6 to 8 hours. I might as well start walking. So I start walking up this hill, and I come to the top. I don't have no clue how long. And in this world I was in, there's no time. I just walk, and then all of a sudden I find myself looking at this group of men, 18 men. Actually, it turned out to be 19. There was a 19th there. I'll explain in a minute. But the rishis were all there. They're sitting around this sacred fire, and some were standing, some were sitting on rocks, logs, and I'm ushered, with hand gestures, like, come sit. I sit on a stone, or I don't know if it was a stump, but I sit. And it was a correct prediction, because there I was amongst all these rishis, and I'm being told that I would have no questions, that I had no questions, right? And I'm feeling totally at peace. And I told it, and was told this was going to happen when it's happening. So it was kind of interesting. So then I look over at this 19th person that's there. This is the guru that sent me to get my reading. And he's standing there, and he goes, Bill, you can skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. I go, what? He says, you can skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. In other words, he didn't want me to not, want to go back. I mean, he wanted me to he wanted me to go back and not stay. He didn't want me to die. And so I got the gist of that. And I all of a sudden I look up at the sky, and this voice just comes, voice, very angelic voice comes out of the sky and says, Bill. I mean, it's like a beautiful 20-something-year-old woman that it was just beautiful. Just says, Bill, just relax, let it go. Just let it go. I promise you joy, peace, bliss, uh, restful, blissful, peaceful. I mean, just went on. Just it was all best. She's telling me that if I just let go, I could enter this other area, this other dimension, this other world, whatever it was, of peace and joy and love, and feel great. And I owed nobody any karmic debt. I didn't have to be coming back for no one. And all I had to do is just let it go, give up the breath, right? And then I hear this guru guy going, yeah, you can skip a beat, you know, don't don't give it up, right? Don't let the heart go, right? Don't so he was trying to persuade me to stay. And so I'm looking at him, I'm saying, hey, she's promised me love and peace and bliss and all these wonderful things. And frankly, I'm kind of tired of all this. I mean, it's just been very painful last few years of health problems. And he goes, "Oh, you can don't give up the heart, right? You could skip a few beats." But he just kept saying that. I go, why? What do you promise me? He says, I promise you, if you come back, most pain you've ever had. I'm going, what? He says, up to this time, you've used special yogic talents and techniques. You could take away pain. He says, but now you're going to be just like everybody else when it comes to pain. And you're going to have to learn to develop some techniques to get rid of your pain so you can actually help others get rid of theirs. So from the human point of view, you being just like everybody, you will develop something and you'll be able to teach these people something and give them that gift. And I said, yeah, no, that's so I said, you're basically promising me more pain and more suffering. In fact, greater pain and suffering than I had before. Yes. Yeah. So skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. And I'm going, that ain't good enough. So I got this whole thing going. Then he kind of does this hand in the air thing, and I see the sky. He's kind of give me another reason, right? So I look up at the sky, and the sky is a panorama of faces, men, women, children, all nationalities, all ages, even a few dogs, a few cats, a couple birds, a couple, possum. I mean, a couple of odd animals, and it was like weird stuff, right? And he goes, if you go, none of these souls, none of these people, none of these animals, none of these what you see will experience what gifts you can give them, whether it's just a gift of love, smile, healing, inspiration, joy, friendship, whatever it is. They will not get it. You don't owe them anything. There's no karmic connection, but they will lose something. And as much as that's a beautiful thing, I'm still thinking peace, joy, bliss. I mean, it's a better package. And so as I'm kind of debating this and looking at this, all of a sudden, it's like, well, they were jump starting my heart on the operating table, they put it back in and they go, and all of a sudden my body goes, whoop, and I find myself, boom, inside my body on the operating table, no longer in India, no longer on the hilltop, but I find myself inside the body, experiencing the greatest excruciating pains I've ever felt. Apparently, when the doctor said some people don't feel anything, wasn't me. Some people feel pain. The anesthesia was wore out, and they're trying to wire the ribs together and do all the stitching and all that stuff. And I hear the doctor, must have been the anesthesiologist, tell the surgeon, he says, I believe the patient's awake and he's feeling everything. The anesthesia just wore off. And the doctor says, that's okay. We got about 40 minutes. We'll finish it up. And I'm going in my mind, hey, but I got a tube down my throat and it's taped. I got my eyes taped. I'm strapped to the table. I can't move. I can't do anything. And I'm in my mind, I'm going, hey, I feel all that. So it was probably the longest 40 minutes of my entire life. And so as I was promised more pain and suffering, it instantaneously happened. So make a very long story, because I got a video about all this, that experience on my channel here as well. I was kept in the hospital another 3 weeks or so. That's a long time in America to keep somebody in the hospital for open heart surgery. Normally 3-4 days to kick you out, send you home. But I kept filling up with fluids, and I needed 5 blood transfusions, and I had great pain. But every time I went to sleep or dozed off, I found myself back on that mountaintop with the rishis, having that conversation and experiencing all that, seeing the faces and seeing a guru going, you can skip a few beats, but don't give apart. I must have heard that 100 times over the next 3-4 weeks. So finally, I'm being wheeled away at night for another procedure, and the phone rings, landline next to my hospital bed, and it's this guru. He tells me who he is and everything. And then the first thing out of his mouth is, you could skip a few beats, but don't give apart. And I go, what'd you say? He says, you could skip a few beats, but don't give apart. I go, wow, that's what you've been telling me, right? So then he basically proceeds to try to embarrass me into getting better, make me feel guilty. He goes, I just sent 100 people to the temple at the ashram here to pray for you, because I told them I was going to cure you. I was going to heal you. Don't embarrass me. So, oh, geez, a little pressure there, right? So a couple days go by, and I decided I'm going to get out of there. But the day before I left, this other prediction from the Nadi came. And that prediction was that Lord Shiva, in the guise of Babaji, would come and anoint me and do all this. I was laying in my hospital bed, and there was like this dome of like a big glass bowl put over the bed, about 7 foot, by 7 foot or so, this big, and there was like energy, and I couldn't see anything outside of this energy bowl that was covering me. It's odd. I can't describe it, but it was like this energy was surrounding it. And at the end of my bed was Babaji, just like you see, with the, no shirt on, shiny skin, almost like it was wet, long black hair, and barefoot. Of course, this is my American Babaji, so this American Babaji's got Levi's on. So it's in my hospital room. But basically, he's just like you see him in the drawings. And he's reaching from the bottom of my bed, the foot of my bed, which at the time it didn't bother me that he was reaching from there, and he's reaching on top of my head, and he's pouring oil and water, and he's chanting, and he's blessing me, even though that's a heck of a long reach, But in this world, in the dimension I was in, or whatever I was going through, it was all perfect. He was sitting there and he was chanting, and he was pouring the oil, and I was thinking, oh, that's what was predicted. He would come and do this. Okay, maybe this is still metaphysical. Maybe this is just me dreaming or desiring to see this or something, And I certainly can never share this with anybody or tell anybody, because somebody's, oh, he's on drugs, and nobody saw it but me, and great. So I experienced this great love, and felt so warm, and got this huge spiritual hug at a super level. And I go, okay, that's the other big thing. And so I come home from the hospital, just to add a little to the story. And my daughter comes, sees me, and she says, hey, Dad, your neighbor, this guy came and visited me. And I said, no, he didn't. He says, oh, yeah, she was there the day before he left. And I go, no, he wasn't. He says, oh, yeah, he said he was there. He says he was standing in the door, and he saw that he had some crazy young Indian guy there with no shirt on, no shoes on, with long black hair, a pair of Levi's on, and he's pouring stuff on top of your head, weird stuff, oil or water or something, and he's chanting in some crazy language. And he was starting to laugh, and he didn't want to embarrass you because he thought the whole thing was crazy, so he left. So therefore, I told my daughter, I told her the story. So anyway, so therefore, the predictions of having this anointment, the predictions of going to this mountaintop, meeting the rishis, is an example of major things that were predicted to happen. The book I was predicted to written was published. Everything that was predicted, big, little, small, everything happened except for the death in 2020. 2020 came, and I decided that really early in the game, I'm going, 2020, I'm staying close to home. I canceled all my workshops and talks around the world. I had about 33 events scheduled. I canceled them all. And I canceled early. I canceled in February. Boom. And I ended up in January, I got deathly sick from flying to Dallas and giving a couple of lectures and, go through San Francisco and everything on an airplane. At the time, I went to the doctor goes, you can't have the flu, the big COVID-19 flu. He says, you haven't been to China, so you couldn't have got it, and it's not in California. Well, fact of the matter, later on, they found out that it was like, a dozen or more people had died in San Francisco Bay Area from the COVID-19 prior to it being officially in the United States. So had I experienced that, it was close to, I felt like I was really dying. So it kind of made me kind of stick even closer to home. I certainly wasn't going to go to India during the COVID-19 issue worldwide from fly. So late in 2020, a friend, Dr. Q, who runs the Indian Institute for Nadi Palm Leaf Reading, I don't know if that's the correct name of it, but anyway, he does these things, and he found me, and I interviewed him and talked to him, and he wanted to find out, because it was still 2020. He wanted to assure me that that's not the end. Maybe there's more for me. So I was given a reading in 2020, which basically that reading said that I was given this new leaf of life, and examine what was going to happen from there going forward. So far, on this first prediction, everything happened. First Nadi read, everything happened, including the reversal on the death, because there was that little caveat that said if I was needed to do things. And now I've been really doing more things, working on spiritual stuff and new books and things. So I'm doing the work, and I've been granted extra time. So you can get a Nadi reading. They don't have to be as spectacular as weird as mine. I mean, mine had some strange things, like 5 dots. I didn't even know what 1 dot was. That's something you can look at the other videos and talk about that. But when you get these readings, you should look at what to take away. The takeaway is, what's my purpose? Why am I here? How can I take better care of my body and myself and my spiritual purpose? And when you focus on looking at those things, not so much focused on job, money, career, that's not important. What's important is, why are you here? What's the relationships? What are you going to give to this world? And I think a lot of that was answered in my first Nadi reading. And so there you go. So if you get your Nadi reading done, realize there's a lot there. Mine's an unusual story, but I'm telling this kind of all together because I kind of piecemealed a lot of this information on different videos. But I want people to realize that these aren't just casual predictions out there. They can be very, very truthful. Mine turned out to be the absolute truth, but experienced in a way I didn't realize. Anyway, I hope this helps you. If you get curious about your Nadi palm leaf reading, I suggest that you look into getting one done with reliable source. And blessings and peace and love to you.